All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Strive for Good Life podcast. I'm here with Jeanne Bessette, who is an artist, author, speaker, queen of the universe, all things amazing. Welcome to the show, Jeanne.
Thanks, Nino. That was awesome. Appreciate that introduction a lot.
Yeah, of course, you deserve it. So let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey, starting with art and kind of how you made the transition, because a lot of people are kind of the starving artist type. So let's start with being successful in that first, and then how you really grew that into a business.
Yeah, for sure. I was born this way. I really can't help myself. But I wasn't always I wasn't always a painter and a sculptor. I was a photographer before that. And before that, I had, terrible jobs, just like a lot of people, doing things I didn't want to be doing. And honestly, I've been a serial entrepreneur for almost my whole life. I stopped working for other people in my late 20s. And I decided that at the time, art was probably a territory I didn't really want to wade into, based on the programming that we're all given, that it's hard and you can't make it. And, all the things that well-meaning people tell you not to do because they love you. And so I became a photographer, and I was good at it and I was successful, but it didn't feed that, that bear that chases you.
Okay.
To become the thing that that you're destined to be. And I know that every entrepreneur has their own story, but I think some of us are born to do something fairly specific. And for me, that is to create visual beauty in the world. And, it was okay as a photographer. Like I said, I was successful at it. My father was an entrepreneur. So my grandfather was an entrepreneur. My mother was an entrepreneur. So it was in the bones. Didn't make it easier, but it was there. And I knew that it was in my DNA. And, the truth is that if I walked into a corporate office, they would immediately know that I was the square peg in a round hole. There'd be no way that I fit in. Not because I don't play nice with others, but I don't take direction very well. So being an entrepreneur, I was much more suited for it. And at some point, I became somewhat disillusioned with being a photographer. I think partly because it was kind of, even though it was really creative, it was my shadow career, And when I started painting, it was like something burst open inside of me. And I really can't put it any other way except that it was a deep knowing that not only was this the thing I was supposed to do, but that I could actually be successful at it. And so I just kept going. That's the broad stroke version, and kind of the rest is history, and there's still a lot to learn and a lot to know. And I'm open and willing to learning and knowing the new things every single day. So I think that's what keeps us alive as entrepreneurs. It's a burning, you can't put it out.
Yeah,
you could try, but it just won't. The fire won't go out.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back, because you said that you had a family essentially of entrepreneurs. Everyone.
Yep.
Dad, mom, grandpa. What kind of businesses were they running, and how did that influence kind of the way that you saw the world?
Nothing like what I'm doing. My grandfather was a jewelry manufacturer, and he was a real estate. I could call him a tycoon, I suppose, but he just owned a lot of properties. And so he made his way that way. My mother she was raising three of us. So she was a bookkeeper, but she was the bookkeeper for my grandfather's business and my father's business when he was alive. My father died when I was very young. So I didn't get to watch that interaction, much past 15 years old. But my father was in the heating and plumbing supply business. So, you would think that there was no creative juices there, but my father was also, he was a square dance caller. We were a square dance family, which
Interesting.
we hated as children, because we got toted around everywhere. But my father could sing and dance. And so that was sort of, he did it in a way where he ran his business, and then he sort of did that as his hobby. I mean, he didn't get paid for doing that, but it was his love. And the creative part of him was alive and well. My mother was artistic, but never really did anything with it. I think I get my artistic gift from her. My one sister's in the healing and social work arts, and my other sister, she made wedding cakes, and she was very crafty. And so we sort of had, we had a vein of that creativity running through us, but like any other family, we weren't using it to create a successful career or income for the most part. I was the first one, I think, that really dove into the truth of who I am and make money at it, which is an interesting balance. But I saw the world as, unfortunately, my father died when I was 15, and I had as much trauma as the next person around that and other things. But one of the things that I do know, that I take with me from the hard knocks, the challenges, and the falling down a lot, is seriously what matters is what you do about it. You can stay down there, and I have. I've done it that way. But when you get up, there's a level of resiliency that you just didn't have before, and you don't even know that that's coming. You just know that you're different. And I really look back on my journey as a gift, because it made me strong, It made me somewhat independent. It made me understand things that I wouldn't have understood otherwise. So I do come from the mindset that the harder things are, if we can really take something from them, then we can apply them to the future of our life and design our life in any way we choose. Seriously, it's a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I want to showcase with this show, is just how entrepreneurship enables that, the ability to design your life however way you want to live it. I think it's also interesting. Yeah. Just this idea that through hardship, I mean, that's where a lot of entrepreneurs find their product or their service, right? A problem that they've solved in their own life. Absolutely. And they turn it around and help others with it. That's
Absolutely.
powerful. Yeah. So I'm interested. So you said that you got into photography. It sounds like, was that because it was kind of still in the artistic realm, even though it was maybe a safer bet? Why did you get into that?
I do believe it felt like a safer bet, because I was able to, at the time, I thought, well, I'll do weddings and portraits and I'll do things like that. What's really fascinating about it is that when I first dove into it, I thought, okay, so here's a need. And I grew up in New England, and people in New England did at the time. I don't know if they do anymore. I suspect they do. Spent a lot of money on getting married. And I looked at that as, first of all, I really enjoyed photography. So it wasn't something that was completely out of the realm of possibilities. But when I decided to do it, I was actually working in a warehouse. I was a forklift operator, and I really hated my job. I was I was the only woman in my sector, and I wasn't treated particularly well. And I think what happened is, again, right, it just got so hard. And I think at the time I was making like maybe $11.47 an hour, whatever it was, right? And I was barely making my bills and trudging into work every single day and dealing with, unfortunately, men who just didn't want me there. And so they would hide my forklift. They would lock me and they did all kinds of crazy things to torture me. But again, when something isn't flowing smoothly, it makes you stop, and start to think about, okay, I'm at the time I was 25 years old, and what am I doing? And this doesn't make sense. And one of the women who I had befriended was getting married to one of the men who was actually nice to me, who worked in the warehouse. And she said, I heard you dabble in photography. And I said, yeah, dabble is a really good word. It's really all I do. And she said, well, would you consider taking our wedding pictures? And I said, that's a big fat no. Because, dabbling in what I do versus the importance of your wedding photographs is not in alignment. And she said, well, I'll tell you what. She said, don't charge me. And then if anything, bad happens, she was all about like, okay, let's all give this a whirl. And I thought, this is an opportunity for me to say yes to something that's really scary, that deep down inside I knew I could do. And what they did was they bought my equipment for me. And
Wow.
so
Okay.
I did the wedding gratis in response. And word got out. And the wedding pictures, I could still see them in my mind, they were good. They weren't great, but they were good, and they were good enough. And one thing led to another, and I think I did maybe 15 or 20 weddings that year. And, through the grace of the universe, I actually hurt myself on the job, and I couldn't do the job anymore. And so I thought, oh my goodness, this is, like it's how you look at something like, oh, either this is a terrible thing or it's an amazing thing, and I can turn this into something new. And so I decided to let myself heal. I'd actually hurt my back, and it was not a good injury. It was a long healing. But by the time I was on the other side of that, I had studied enough and I had gathered enough courage. And then I just put myself in my first art fair and my first wedding fair, in the malls where, like with the booths and the whole thing. And I'm not gonna lie, I was scared shitless. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And I booked 40 weddings that year.
Wow.
And it just took off from there. I did that for 13 years. By the time I was finished and really, quite frankly, very burnt out, I was probably fetching about $25,000 to $30,000 per wedding. But I spent a lot of time studying my craft. And when I wasn't studying my craft, I was studying the art of business because I knew that was necessary to keep myself going. And I did give it up eventually because it is very grueling. It's a hard way to make a living as a photographer. I mean, at the time it was film, not digital. Digital, I don't mean to degrade photographers now, but you take a picture, it doesn't work out, you take another one. Back then, you it's like walking in the snow uphill both ways, right? We had the film, and then you didn't really know if the camera was not acting properly, and sometimes it wasn't. And oh my goodness, the stress factor was so high that after that 13th year, I was super done. I was really done.
Wow. So 13 years.
Yeah.
In photography. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quite the ride, and all on film. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of hold on to it as a badge of honor.
Yeah, absolutely. As you should.
Kind of a big deal.
That's pretty impressive. Okay, so you just got burnt out because of the stress factor, and then so I guess, I don't know, did you just stop one day, or did you see the opportunity to transition to something else? Like, how did that work for you?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. My life is such a beautiful ride. We were living in Rhode Island at the time, and my partner at the time was a sailor and wanted to sail more. And I tell these stories because they're just sort of part of the journey, And we ended up in Florida, and we had a house on the water. We were able to do that because Florida at the time was super cheap, so a lot less expensive than, we were not able to have something like that in New England. And we bought a 1962 25-foot Morgan, which is I don't know a lot about sailing. I'm an intuitive sailor, but I learned, of course. And that was what brought us to Florida. And at the time, we had met a realtor. Now, remember, real estate's in my blood, in my bones, right?
Right.
And she said, wow, you're pretty good at, like you can tile and paint and fix things, right? And I said, well, that's true. And she said, well, why don't you flip houses? And so I did that for 3 years, and I wasn't very good at it, I do have to say. It was really hard work, and I'm a woman who takes, I can do just about anything, but my body was like, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. Yeah, this is a no. And one day in 2006, I just said, I want to go back into the arts. And I just jumped, and I ended up in an art center in Manatee County on the west coast of Florida. And I took some classes. Like, I knew how to paint, but I thought, well, let me get into the community. And one day, one of the directors came in, and she kind of leaned in, and her husband was an artist, and she called me the real deal. This was the third time somebody had called me the real deal. I didn't have a clue what that meant at the time. I just knew maybe I had some talent, right? And she said, we just lost one of the artists who was going to do one of the gallery shows has walked away from her contract. And I'd like to know if you're interested in showing your work at one of the shows. Now, this was like the co-director, and she just believed in me. Now, the actual director thought I was just Looney Tunes when I walked into her office and said, hey, I want that slot. I want to show my work in the gallery. And she looked at me and she said, oh, you do you? And I said, I know I can do it. I will make you proud. I won't disappoint. And if you give me the opportunity, I will step up. She said, well, how many paintings do you have finished? And I said, well, how many paintings do I need to have finished? And she said, well, the space is, this big by this big. And so it'd be really nice if you had like maybe between 20 and 30 paintings. And I said, I will bring 32 paintings. Like, wow. That was just, and that's who I was. I didn't know how not to be confident, So she gave me the opportunity. And I sold my very first painting in that show. I think that was 2007. And it was a fairly large painting. I sold it for $800. It was more money than I had ever even made, like, doing anything like that. So I thought, holy cow. And then it was several more years of a lot of work. But again, I worked at the craft and I worked at the business. And one day a gallery called out of the blue. I didn't even know how they got my name. I swear I didn't come down to earth for at least 3 weeks. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And I think he might have found me on LinkedIn or some crazy thing like that. And he said, I just want to give you a chance. I think your work is great. It's quirky. At the time, it was very quirky and whimsical. A lot of it still is. And he said, I just want to give you a chance. And that led to another gallery and another gallery and another gallery. And by the end of, I guess, 2016, I had over 20 galleries carrying my work nationwide, making probably almost $500,000 a year net, selling my work. And once again, got burnt out. I was feeding the machine, working for the money, kind of.
Yeah.
And then in 2017, 18, I pulled my work off the market to recalibrate who I am as an artist, which is a really scary thing to do when you're making that level of money. And, but I knew it was something I needed to do. Once again, taking chances that were exceptionally scary. And for 5 years, lived off my savings because I had done really well. And about 1.5 years ago, decided to step back in as a new kind of artist and the next level of my game, so to speak. And it's taking off like gangbusters again. So I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Everything is pointing to keep going, So yeah, I mean, that's again, the broad strokes of the story. I can't not be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
This is just what feeds my soul for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible. You said a lot of really interesting things there. And even going back to what you were saying earlier, the common thread seems to be, you know, just taking the opportunity and not being afraid to put yourself out there and give it a shot. And I love the confidence of being able to say, yeah, I'll show up with even more paintings.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Well, I didn't talk about how many days I was under the bed, but that's, that's
yeah,
that's
right. But in that moment, and that's the thing. I always hear, or I think of the saying all the time, that there are no problems, there are only opportunities. And so it just seems like that's how you view the world, that anytime there's something there in front of you, you take it, you go for it. And I think a lot of people, they let that fear hold them back, and
yeah,
they don't take that step into the darkness
yeah,
before they see how it's going to work, right? And so
yeah.
what do you credit that ability to? Is that something your parents instilled in you, or how did you develop that?
Oof. What a great question. Weirdly, I've never really been asked that. I have a level of tenacity that it's just a part of who I am. Um, in fact, I'm now writing a book about that journey, and it's the alchemy of freedom, right? Or alchemized freedom. And there's a bridge that can occur between, and again, I'll go back to trauma, right? Because trauma is that thing that either makes or breaks you, right? It's kind of the thing that either propels you forward or you become an alcoholic. It's really, there's almost no in between from that level of pain that many of us, are in our age group go through. If you're human, you have trauma. But I think really what I've been shown time and time again is every time I leap through, and you can't leap over fear, and you can't ignore fear, but you can move through it. And I kind of have a saying that the thing that's really scary today is the thing that's like, that's not such a big deal tomorrow. And the reason that it's not such a big deal tomorrow is because you move through that level of angst, and then you actually do grow in confidence. Confidence isn't something we're born with. It's something that we build, and it's a cumulative building, one upon the other. And so that's what the book will be about. It'll be the bridge that we can create between, look how it started, to how do I then create a new way of being, and the alchemy that it takes, the mindset that it takes, the meditation, however you do it. Everybody has a different way of getting there or not getting there. But I'm hopeful to be able to help people, especially people who want to do something that the world thinks is either A, not really doable, dance, music, theater, anything that's creative isn't really, like, if I went to school to be a plumber, everybody would be like, yoo-hoo, yay, this is how you'll do it, and this is what you do. And it's almost like there's a blueprint for it. With being a creative, there's kind of no blueprint, because it's the nature of who we are. To be a creative is already standing on the skinny branches, waiting, looking way beyond the signpost. There's no handrails. That's the nature of being an artist. And so I try to approach my life every single day in that way. Now, I don't always succeed at it, but that's the plan. Approach it from a place of curiosity, and knowing that if you didn't try, you won't make it. The only way to make it is to try.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
It does in a lot of ways. And that last thought is really interesting, because I think about that all the time, how I would feel essentially if I had to live with the regret of not having tried.
Right.
And that's worse to me than any risk in actually trying.
I kind of want to say something to be really clear too. My way is not everybody's way, right? People who don't want that entrepreneurial life are not wrong, right? Yeah. They're just not me. So and some people would, they think that I think everyone should be an entrepreneur. I don't think everybody's made for it. I think some people are excellent at doing what they do and being part of, the I don't know if I like the cog, right? In the system that makes the system work better. And there are people who are designed for that very thing, and they're extremely successful at it. And that's great. I'm just not. That would suck for me. I can't even imagine, So, which is weird because I talk a lot about team members now, and how I get to a certain place is because being a Lone Ranger is not scalable. Being an artist and doing what I do is scalable in increments, but pulling a team together of people who do things better than you, like publicity, like marketing, like operations, like whatever it is. Let's say I want to branch out into a clothing line, which may or may not be in my future. Wink, wink. I have to hire people who know how to do that. I have to hire people that are in fashion or textiles or, how people do certain things. And that may not have anything to do with Jeanne Bessette as the artist, or it may be very coherent with Jeanne Bessette as the artist. But if I want to scale my world into something new, I have to look to other people to help me understand the things I just don't understand, or do that and then trust the team. That person knows better than I do at a particular thing. So that's kind of where I am now. I'm in a place where I'm starting to think about bigger picture stuff, and my art is selling beautifully, and I make a very good living at it, and they sell for a lot of money, and that is wonderful. But if I get sick tomorrow, or if I die tomorrow, my machine dies because I can't wave my arms with paint on the end of a brush anymore. So I've got to think about, okay, so what's the next level? What's the next cool thing and again, there's that scalability. Where's that next place where I could take my world and quite frankly, create generational wealth as opposed to just I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So it's the dilemma of being stuck working in your business and then not being able to work on your business. So I'm curious how you developed the sense to see that, recognize it, and make the shift. Was that just out of, I guess, problems that arose, or were you coaching that kind of helped you shift that mindset, or where do you think that came from?
I'm a strong advocate of coaching. I've always had coaches. I've had business coaches. I've had spiritual mentors. I still do. I have a publicist now. I have a marketing director. I have a COO. There are things now that I have set in place, knowing that, because now remember, I love the art of business as much as I love the business of art. So scalability is a thing, right? And so now, and I'm 61 years old, so I'm like, okay, so how long do I want to be working my butt off? Because I do, and I love working, but how long do I want to do that? And then be able to sustain, or at least continue to advance the way I want to live. I like nice things. I'm not gonna, I just do. So how do I then take what I know and then create some new thing? And the other thing is I'm a total visionary, and I love anything new. I'm always curious about something I don't know. And so that, I think, is what drives me into the other level of something, while I'm still working on, scaling myself as an artist. So what do I want to do? Do I want to be in museums? Do I want to, you almost, even in the arts itself, you have to kind of choose. Like, I could go into merchandising. I could go into licensing. I could try to get into the MoMA. I could do all kinds of things, but you kind of have to almost pick something. You can't, my mother used to say, you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. So choose the thing that lights your face on fire. And so I think that's what drives me. I also think I get a little bored. I think that's an entrepreneurial spirit that many entrepreneurs have. They get bored, so they're constantly like kind of like looking for what's the new thing? How do I, like you said, how do I fix a problem? Or how do I enhance someone's life as a creative? That's what I'm always asking. How do I enhance someone's life? What can I do that creates a life for someone that's like better? And what I do know is when people look at my art and and not everybody loves art, right? Some people just don't understand art. They're just not my people. It's no big deal. But when someone walks into my space and goes, you gotta be kidding, what is happening here? Like, this is holy cow. I know that I've resonated with somebody who I can serve, and I can create something for them that actually does enhance their life. Even if it's something you don't think you need. Without art in the world, we're pretty utilitarian. So regardless of what that art looks like, doesn't have to be a painting on the wall. Could be the color you choose in your living room. That's art, right?
Yeah.
What you wear, that's art, right? It's your style, it's your fashion, which I have none. I have zero fashion. I wear black t-shirts all the time with paint on them.
That is art. Yeah, I love that. We are all creative in our own way, and I believe in that. And so when people say they don't have creativity, that's not true. And
It's not true.
you just have a different form of it. You express it differently.
That's right.
So speaking of your art, though, I'm kind of curious because there's so many people that are aspiring artists
Sure.
that have tried it, and for whatever reason, yeah, who knows why, but they haven't achieved the level of success that you have and haven't been able to turn it into a business.
Yep.
I'm just curious as to kind of how you, I don't know, like the strategy maybe you used, or were you very intentional about the way that you I guess built your art business? Because
Yeah.
that's just, it seems amazing, and it doesn't, you don't hear stories like this very often.
No, I agree. And at one point I do teach other artists, how to kind of do what I did, but I begrudgingly talk about how my career grew because I kind of made it look easy, and that doesn't bode well when I'm trying to help other artists do what I did. I think that first of all, I'm highly intuitive, almost downright psychic, and I do follow my heart when it speaks because it truly does know the way. And I kind of follow your heart knows the way. I probably stole that from somebody else, but I do believe in it. And also going back to the fact that I did study how to be a business person. My partner for many years, and we're not together anymore, but spoke of business being a very important aspect of what I was going to do. And if I didn't understand business, then I should hire someone who does. And really, that's how the gallery systems started, right? Many artists don't want to do that. And so they make beautiful art, and then they give it to someone who does have a business, and they can sell their art, and they share the profits. I am very fortunate in that I get to do the thing that most people do after they retire. What I tell people about being an artist, though, is it's not always about the art. I am driven by connection. I am driven by making the world a better place. I am driven by service. And I think that's my age. You reach a certain age and all of a sudden you become more service oriented. How can I leave the world a better place? I'm not driven by money per se. I'm driven by a lack of it. I don't want to not have enough, and so having nice things is only important to me because I really, really value beauty. And so that's important. I do know that I was born with this gift, but I still worked really hard to make my gift better. And that whole thing about 10,000 hours is real. It's more like 150 billion hours. It's, you know, how did you get that? Well, I do it every day, whether I want to do it or not. I to some degree, I'm either writing or I'm painting or I'm working on my business or I'm doing these wonderful things with, podcasters and that's another thing. I'm an extrovert. Many artists are introverts. Being an extrovert has served me really well. I can't be in the studio all day all by myself. I'll go crazy. That's not going to work. So I have to do things like this to create community. And that serves me because really, if you think about it, talking to you today is pure marketing. Really, it's not why I'm doing it, but it's a benefit of doing it. So I don't look at things that I do as to, what can I get out of that? Although that's an aspect of it, of course. But I talk to people because I love people. And so that feeds that energy. And it's contagious. People know when you're doing something you love, it becomes contagious. And so when I talk to artists about this who just want to be in their studio making their art, I say, then be the best artist on the planet. Because nowadays, we don't actually, I hate to say it like this because, galleries are a beautiful way to bring your art into the world, but we don't need them anymore because of social media. And back in the day, I was excellent at being out there, and the galleries would get upset. They'd be like, well, somebody's going to go around us and come to you and they're going to buy your art from you and they're not going to go through us. And I'm the gatekeeper. And now they're starting to understand that that's a co-creation. If I'm marketing myself and I've got featured articles and I'm on podcasts, I'm talking about entrepreneurship and I'm teaching other people how to be a better anything, that serves our connection. Somebody's going to come in and go, oh my gosh, I just saw this woman on blah, blah, blah. This is her art. Holy cow. So it just feeds the energy. And when the energy is coherent, it resonates with the people who love what you're doing and they become coherent with you. And then you sell art.
That's beautiful.
It really is that simple. Not simple at all.
Right. Much easier said than done.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I see how this applies to other businesses, not just the artistic world,
Yes.
right? It's all about connecting with people. And it is a challenge for those that are introverts. I'm more introverted naturally. But I understand and appreciate the value of community and putting yourself out there. You have to, no matter what you're in, you have to market yourself. That means talking to people. That means putting it out in the world.
That's right. That's right.
So, if you're listening and you're an introvert, find ways around that, because there's no other way to succeed.
It's really true. And the other things that we have to do is, I always think of Elton John when I talk about this, when to pivot, and I love his career and his story and his whole outward and drugs and alcohol and all of it was a problem and how he overcame all of that, But what I really think of when I think of that man is how his music changed over the years, because a new generation came in and he was like, oh, okay, so well, they're not really going to want to listen to this. They're going to want to do this. And I don't even know if it was a conscious decision on his part, but if you look at all of the era of his music, it's all different, and so he just kept pivoting, which is amazing to me. I study, I watch other people who are successful and how they do it, especially creatives. And he's just one of the people that I'm just like, wow, he pivoted when it was needed. It was almost like he knew when to do that next thing. And he was unabashed, if you think about it. Same with Freddie Mercury. Really, right? Talk about, I hate to say it like this, but man, was he ugly. He was just not a handsome man. And right. And all the teeth in his mouth, and that helped his octave of singing, and it was better. And he just knew it. And he was flamboyant about it. And so he became Freddie Mercury. So it's kind of an interesting thing to watch these people who do the thing in a different way than you do it. And how can I apply what I just saw? What do I need to do? And for me, it's dive in. Be the best you can be. Just be the best. Give 110%, give 150%, you know,
Yeah.
and keep going. Keep going. Just keep going.
That's solid advice, especially this idea of needing to pivot and being aware of that and not being afraid of it, because so many people, I think, I mean, just from what I've seen, they'll attach their identity to the one thing that they're doing. But obviously markets change, people change, consumers change. And if your business doesn't change along with that,
Yep.
You're going to put it out of business essentially. So
Yep.
I love that. Earlier you alluded to, taking the next step, like you pulled back with your art business.
I did.
To kind of regroup for the next level. So what did that look like, and kind of where are you going with it now to evolve as a business owner in your art?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So what happened was I realized I was, again, feeding the machine. I had over 20 galleries I was painting for. I'm a prolific painter, so it wasn't too painful. But ultimately what I started hearing a lot was, and it was sort of an undertone, we want you to grow as an artist, but don't go too far. In other words, most galleries, and this is not a detriment to what they do, but what they're retail stores, right? So they'll take something that you do, and they have a customer base for that, and they don't want to lose their customer base, so they kind of want you to kind of keep doing what you're doing, like that thing you do, everybody loves that. Do more of that. And you're, as an artist, we're like, I want to keep going. I want to do something new, So it's kind of an interesting thing, as at the time I was in what I would consider my mid-career. And I couldn't keep going. I had to keep doing, and I was I could just keep painting those over and over and over, whatever it was I was doing over and over and over again, and they would keep selling because people loved them. And I'm not talking about the exact same imagery, but the same mark making, the same way you do something. And what's really weird about the art world is that's revered. So in other words, if I create a strong mark making ability that that it's Jeanne Bessette when you see it, that means I have really honed that skill. I have created something that is now notable. You see the painting and you go, that must be a Jeanne Bessette. How do I grow from that? How do I take that to the next place? And kind of the only way to do that is either, my way was to remove myself from the machine. And I took 5 years to do that. And fortunately, first of all, I had enough savings. Secondly, I had a following of people that one person said, that's the smartest thing I've ever seen. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This is like the craziest thing I can think of to do, right? This is nuts. And they said, no. You literally just removed yourself from the market. Like you took away the candy. And I never thought about it that way. I was like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I don't know if I can do this. And I'm like, I was doing the under the bed thing, right? I don't know. And they said, no. You do know. You just don't know that you know. And so I took 5 years, and a lot of hard things happened in those 5 years. I ended up in divorce, and there was just stuff, life stuff, right? Stuff that's hard. And when I stepped back in, like I knew there was something more, and I knew that what I needed to do was to become the disruptor that I knew that I was. And like, but I don't even know what that means. Like, I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't even know the word disruptor at the time. And so I thought, okay, so I'm doing this thing. I'm following my heart. I'm letting my intuition lead. Now what? And for a long time, nothing happened. Like weeks after weeks after weeks after weeks of nothing happening. And then every once in a while, like an old client would call and be like, wow, just like you just dropped off the planet and we would love another painting. And so it kind of kept me going, right? But what happened was honestly, spiritually, I grew. I became a new me through those other levels of hard, through the trust, through the blind faith. And I coupled my ability to see, and I do that in the air quotes, right? To see as an intuitive and a psychic person and a spiritual being with the art in a way that created a co-creation between a divine source, which I was always aware of, but never had a close relationship with, not in the way that I would call it now, that I could then channel something new. And then it almost became not my art anymore. And I had to literally kill the ego artist. I had to murder her. I had to let her die. And then let her come like a phoenix, right? I had to let her come back, right? And be like, okay, so how, like I got goosebumps talking about this. And so what's really interesting is as I come back roaring as what I call conscious artist, creating activated art that actually is alive, but it's kind of not mine anymore. It's mine and this beautiful soup of divine awareness now. Like I don't come into the studio and paint before meditate. I meditate first. I ask to be cleared. I ask to be neutralized. Like please get me out of the way. Whatever you do, get me out of the way. And the art started changing in a whole new way. And the people who loved my art before were like, yeah, I like that other stuff. Like, I know, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna go over here and keep going. And so I'm still in the starting gate of that. So you're catching me in a place where I'm kind of teetering and trusting and, I say my version of praying and do my version of talking to whatever these energies are. Everybody calls it something different. It's all the same. We're all just headed home, right? And so I pull that energy in, and that is something's changing in the art. The art is alive in a way that it's never been before. And more people are starting to respond to it in a new way beyond the emotional. My art's always been emotional. People always talk about, oh my gosh, and then I cried, and then, oh my goodness, and it made me feel something. And now they're like, what is this? What is happening? Like, I don't know, feeling something in my body, and I don't know how to explain it. And I'm like, this is so cool. And as far as I know, this is the future of real art. And how interesting that AI has now come along and makes all these beautiful pictures, but it can't make conscious art because it doesn't have a soul. It's not even possible. It can emulate what we do and make beautiful things, but it cannot make something that's alive. Not really. I mean, not really. And so I can't lose my job because I do something beyond the visual. I understand vibration and energy and how that all works. And I apply that now to my craft. And it's only getting better from here. I'm very excited about the future. And I can't imagine doing it any differently now. And I would never have gotten here if I didn't take that time away from, as I call, feeding that machine. Because it was successful. Who the heck wants to walk away from $500,000 a year? That's just dumb, right? That's just plain stupid. But when you take that level of faith and apply it to the new thing, you can't fail. There is no fail. So anyway, thanks for letting me get on my soapbox about that.
No, I love that. That's powerful stuff. And I'm religious, and so I'm spiritual, and I know that has absolutely changed my life for the better. And when I'm not connected to that, I feel it. And I suffer for it.
Yep.
And so I love what you said about trying to get yourself out of the way with your meditation. That's absolutely a game changer. It has been in my life, and I know it would be for anyone listening out there. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're coming up on time. Where can people go to connect with you?
It's just almost impossible not to find me. I have a website, JeanneBessette.com. I am on Facebook I have a personal Facebook page. I have a public Facebook page and a business Facebook page. I have an Instagram page. I'm getting ready I have a YouTube page that's been sort of dormant for a while, and I'm getting ready to talk about a lot of this stuff on my YouTube page so that people can really connect with like that level. I want to share now. I want people to know that it's doable, and all you got to do is just like keep trusting and keep moving and keep going. And that there are people like us out there who actually do want to help. We want people to understand that they can do it. All they need to do is trust themselves, trust that guidance, trust that there's something bigger than them who loves them to bits, kind of all of it. I think, it's like I said, it's impossible not to find me.
Yeah, well, for anyone listening, we'll have links to your social media and your website in the show notes. So go there to find those. What is your final message to the world? Anyone listening?
Well, it's kind of a wrap up with everything I said. If you follow a dream that is truly yours and you trust the guidance that will be put in front of you, and you continue to align with that guidance, it's not going to get easier, but it also cannot fail. So keep going. Just keep going. You got this. That's my message.
That's a beautiful way to end this. Thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome.
It's been amazing. For anyone out there listening, please share this and make sure you're subscribed on whatever platform you're listening to this on. Thank you so much again, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you, Nino. What a pleasure.